It's 2 a.m. You're exhausted. You need to sleep, but your mind won't stop racing. That text you sent at 3 p.m., the meeting where you spoke too much, the joke that landed weird. You're running a full investigation, replaying every interaction like you're building a case for trial. If you've ever laid in bed, physically drained but mentally prosecuting yourself, you're experiencing something psychologists call sleep-onset rumination, and it's not actually about sleep. Most people hit the pillow and their thoughts slow down naturally. The sleep-onset sequence kicks in. Processing decreases. Sleep takes over. But for some people, lying down triggers the opposite response. The moment distractions disappear, the mind finally has bandwidth to analyze every social interaction from the day. That awkward comment from the morning meeting? Filed under review later. But later is now. And it's not random. During the day, you're flooded with new information, conversations, interactions, constant input. There's no space to fully process that weird moment from earlier. But at 2 a.m., it's totally quiet, and your mind has been waiting all day for this. Research on hyperarousal discovered something strange. For some people, the act of lying down increases mental activity instead of decreasing it. Studies found that people with high cognitive arousal at night took 37 minutes longer to fall asleep. And the problem didn't stop there. They spent 44 more minutes awake during the night compared to people without it. Hyperarousal is when your nervous system can't downshift. Most systems treat bedtime as a signal to power down. Hyperaroused systems interpret it differently. Lying down removes external distractions, which means there's finally space to focus on everything that got filed away during the day, meaning the transition to sleep becomes an opportunity to investigate rather than rest. And here's what makes the nighttime investigation worse. The evidence never disappears. You can pull up that text exchange at 2 a.m., check the exact timestamp when they read your message and didn't respond. That "haha yeah" reply, you'll spend an hour analyzing what those two words mean. The evidence is permanent, and the case can stay open indefinitely. But there's something specific about nighttime that amplifies this pattern beyond just having access to your phone. Research on circadian rhythms discovered a sharp peak in negative affect that occurs during the circadian night, around 3 a.m. The same interaction you brushed off at 3 p.m. feels catastrophic at 3 a.m., not because the interaction changed, but because emotional processing itself becomes more negative as night progresses. During the day, your prefrontal cortex, the part handling rational thinking and emotional regulation, runs at full capacity. It can put social interactions into perspective. It can say, "This probably doesn't matter." At night, your prefrontal cortex powers down for sleep, while your amygdala, the threat detection center, stays active. You're losing the part that provides perspective while keeping the part that screens for danger. Your capacity to regulate emotional responses goes offline precisely when your threat detection is most alert. That "haha yeah" text that seemed fine during the day becomes evidence of social rejection requiring immediate investigation at 2 a.m. That's when the emotional thermostat breaks. Everything feels more urgent, more threatening, more unresolved. And this creates a physical paradox that makes the whole thing worse. Your body is sending every signal that it needs sleep. You're exhausted, your muscles are heavy, your eyes are burning, but your system is running like you're preparing for a marathon. Studies on cortisol patterns show that in people with chronic sleep-onset rumination, cortisol levels that should drop sharply after 10 p.m. stay elevated through the night. Your stress hormone is staying active when it should be shutting down. Meanwhile, your heart rate variability, the measure of how well your nervous system can relax, drops to levels normally seen during active stress responses. You're literally experiencing the physiology of being chased while lying completely still in bed. This is what psychologists call the tired but wired state. Your body has all the fatigue markers of someone who desperately needs rest, but your nervous system is running threat detection protocols like danger is imminent. You can feel both things at once, the physical exhaustion, the mental activation, and they're fighting each other. Your temperature regulation gets thrown off too. Normal sleep onset requires your core body temperature to drop slightly. But hyperarousal keeps your system running hot, which prevents the temperature decline that signals your body it's safe to sleep. You're stuck in a loop where the thing preventing sleep is also preventing the physical conditions necessary for sleep to happen. And this pattern has deep roots. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of shutting down threat detection when darkness fell. Predators hunted at night. The humans who maintained some mental alertness while resting were the ones who woke up when something was wrong. But in the modern world, the threats aren't predators, they're unanswered texts and ambiguous social signals. And here's what makes social threats particularly brutal for this system. A physical predator gives you clear information. It's there or it's not. You fight, you run, or it leaves. There's a resolution point. Your nervous system can discharge the stress response and move on. Social threats don't work that way. An unanswered text isn't a clear threat, it's ambiguous. They could be busy, they could be upset, they could have not seen it. Your brain has no way to determine which one is true, so it treats all possibilities as active threats that need monitoring. And unlike a predator that either attacks or leaves, social ambiguity never resolves on its own. That text could stay on red forever. The uncertainty remains, which means your threat detection system never gets the signal to stand down. Your brain literally can't tell the difference between "I'm being watched by a predator in the dark" and "they read my message 4 hours ago and didn't respond." Both activate the same neural pathways, both trigger the same hypervigilance, both feel like survival issues. Except you can't fight a text message, you can't run from social rejection. The activation has nowhere to go, so it just circulates all night, every night. The pattern isn't trying to torture you, it believes it's solving a problem. Every replay at 2 a.m. is an attempt to reach resolution before sleep. The logical part of you is saying, if I can just figure out what they meant, then I can rest. Except social interactions don't offer that kind of resolution. You're trying to solve an equation with variables you'll never access, so the calculating continues. And exhaustion makes it worse. Sleep deprivation impairs emotional regulation even further, which means even less ability to put things in perspective the next night. Studies on chronic sleep-onset rumination found that the real problem isn't the lack of sleep itself, it's the pattern creating more material to analyze. You're exhausted the next day, so you perform worse socially, which creates more interactions to investigate the following night. The investigation generates the evidence for tomorrow's investigation. The cycle feeds itself. But here's what makes this cycle especially difficult to break. The nighttime investigation feels productive. You're not just lying there doing nothing, you're working on something. You're analyzing that conversation to figure out what went wrong. You're planning what you'll say tomorrow to fix it. You're rehearsing how you'll handle the next interaction. It feels like problem solving. And in some ways, your brain is problem solving. It's running simulations, testing scenarios, preparing responses. The same cognitive machinery you use during the day to navigate social situations is running at full capacity at 2 a.m. Except there's a critical difference. Research on decision-making shows that nighttime cognition is qualitatively different from daytime processing. You're not actually working with better information at 2 a.m. You're working with the same information filtered through a degraded cognitive system. The prefrontal cortex that helps you assess whether something actually matters is offline. The amygdala that amplifies threat perception is running the show. You're not solving problems, you're generating elaborate solutions to problems that your compromised nighttime brain is artificially inflating. And because it feels like productive thinking, you keep doing it. The investigation feels necessary. It feels like the only way to resolve the uncertainty and finally sleep. But the resolution never comes, because you're not operating with the cognitive capacity to actually resolve anything. You're just creating more elaborate narratives about why that "haha yeah" text is evidence of something catastrophic. So when does this become a pattern instead of just a bad night? Well, it's about frequency. Some people only experience this when something genuinely significant happened, a difficult conversation, an actual conflict. something that needs mental processing before sleep. That's normal. Others experience this every single night, regardless of what happened. A completely routine day still triggers overnight analysis of mundane interactions. Some nervous systems treat bedtime as shutdown time. Thoughts slow, processing stops, sleep arrives naturally, not because these people are more relaxed about social interactions. Their system just runs a different protocol. Other nervous systems treat bedtime as investigation time. The quiet triggers analysis mode. The absence of distraction becomes an opportunity to finally process everything. Not because these people are more anxious, their hyperarousal system just activates when it should be deactivating. And after months or years of this pattern, something else happens. The threshold for what counts as unresolved drops lower and lower. Eventually, even perfectly normal conversations trigger the investigation protocol. It stops being about the content, it becomes about the routine itself. Research on conditioned responses shows that consistent rumination at bedtime creates a trigger. Rumination starts initiating the moment you lie down, regardless of whether there's actually anything to ruminate about. The horizontal position itself becomes the cue. You've accidentally trained your system to trigger the investigation mode the moment you lie down. At that point, it becomes hard to distinguish between what genuinely needs processing and what's just the pattern running automatically. If you had a legitimately difficult day and you're processing it before sleep, that makes sense. If you had a routine day and you're still running investigations at 2 a.m., the pattern is treating normal interaction as threat data. And here's what makes this particularly challenging. The pattern exists because at some point it worked. The nighttime analysis helped you avoid something, or solve something, or prepare for something. And now it runs the same program every night, whether it's useful or not. But that's the trap. That's what keeps people stuck in this cycle. They assume it's permanent. They identify as someone who can't sleep, rather than someone whose system learned a pattern that can be unlearned. So here's what the psychology tells us. People who can't turn off at night aren't more thoughtful or more socially aware. They're not overthinking or processing better than everyone else. They're operating with a nervous system that interprets the transition to sleep as a signal to increase mental activity rather than decrease it. And understanding the pattern is the first step toward changing it. So, are you watching this at 2 a.m. right now? Yeah, you're not alone. But just in case you can't power down and this explained something you've been experiencing your whole life, the next video breaks down another pattern you'll probably recognize.